Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Top of Our podcast. And today we're going to be looking at the events of the second day of the third test between England and the West Indies. And this is the deciding test as well. So without further ado, Jacob will give us our overview of the day.
Yeah, I've actually written it today. Usually I just try and make it up. I don't know if you can tell, but I think our listeners and viewers deserve better. So because I was awake at 7 o'clock this morning because I couldn't sleep. So I've written one. So the day began with England's overnight batsmen resuming on 258 for 4, with Buttler on 56 and Pope on 91. Pope unfortunately failed to add to this total and make his second test century, as while he was dropped off Shannon Gabriel's bowling, big West Indian paceman took matters into his own hands and bowled England's number 5 in his next over. England then went on to lose 3 wickets for 10 runs off 14 deliveries, if you include Pope's wicket, with Buttler being caught behind on 67 and Wokes chopping the ball onto his own stumps on 1. Jofra Archer then became Kemar Roach's fourth and final victim of the day, caught behind on 3 off 5 balls, bringing Broad to the crease to partner Dom Bess. Not only did Broad stop the slide, but he channeled his inner all-rounder to score England's joint third fastest 50 of all time in just 33 balls. Let's just, on a side note, take a look at the people he's on that list with. Only Ian Botham has scored a half century than Stuart Broad, one from 28 balls and one from 32. Broad is tied with Alan Lamb and Freddie Flintoff for that record. So only Ian Botham is better than Stuart Broad over 50 runs. So Broad made the joint third fastest 50 of all time in 33 balls before being caught in the deep by Blackwood. Anderson was then caught behind on 11, leaving Dom Bess on 18 not out of a battling 96 balls, and England 369 all out. Broad was once again the star early on in the West Indies' first innings, as he had the usually limpet-like Craig Brathwaite caught behind on 1, having bowled only 3 balls at him. Broad, interestingly, has taken a wicket in his first over at Old Trafford in 4 of his previous 5 innings there, which is quite impressive.
Yeah.
Campbell was given a second life. John Campbell, their other opener, was given a second life on 10 after having a simple catch behind dropped by Ben Stokes at slip in the 5th over, making Jimmy Anderson even more grumpy. He went on to make an attractive 32 before being bounced out by Archer, leaving the West Indies 44 for 2. England kept a tight hold on the run rate, and the pressure began to tell on the Windies' fragile batting lineup in the 23rd over, when Hope was caught behind off Anderson on 17, and then both Brooks and Chase fell within the next 10 overs, the former caught behind and the latter trapped LBW, to leave the West Indies 73 for 5. Jermaine Blackwood and Jason Holder put up some resistance, but Blackwood was bowled by Chris Wokes on 26, with the Windies 110 for 6. Holder and Shane Dowrich survived a barrage of short balls, with Dowrich in particular looking extremely uncomfortable, until bad light brought the day's play to a close with the West Indies 137 for 6, trailing by 232 and still needing 33 tomorrow/this morning as we're recording it to avoid the follow-on.
Yeah. So good day for England. Very good day for England, actually.
Interestingly, because it started really as looking like the West Indies kind of day, especially after yesterday, and then
no, definitely there was. He started the day that flurry of quick wickets for England. Pope gone, then Buttler, but then you had Stuart Broad come in, and obviously by that point you think, well, we're well into the tail there. But obviously you do Stuart Broad a disservice if you forget that he also can bat. He does have Test centuries to his name. And so he proved what he can do with the bat. Obviously, he didn't need to prove anything, but he's shown that actually he brings a lot more to this team than just the bowling, and the bowling is world class.
Yeah, he used to be a bit of an all-rounder. He was kind of seen in that way. Obviously, he was then hit on the face in match against India in 2014, and this was actually his highest score since that incident. He had a Test century before that, but it really shook him, and now he seems to be enjoying it again. He said in an interview after the day that actually the reason he got out, he shouldn't have slowed down. He should have just carried on smacking it. He started pushing it around for ones and twos, which everyone thought was quite smart. But he said, I just shouldn't have slowed down. I should have just carried on trying to hit it out the ground, and whatever happened, happened.
I suppose when you get into that groove, there are days when you get into that spell and you just feel like everything you do with the ball hits, and it always hits the middle of the bat, and they go where you need them to go. And he just had one of those days yesterday.
It's just mad that only Botham has hit a faster half century, and he's tied with Alan Lamb and Flintoff.
You've got people like
Broad.
People like Ben Stokes and Joe Root are not anywhere on that list. But I think actually this is a really good point, is that in the future, in 10 years' time, there'll be a pub quiz question somewhere about who's hit the second fastest or third fastest Test half century for England ever. And and people will be like, they were from the 2020 Test team, and people will say Ben Stokes or Joe Root. Like, no, it's Stuart Broad.
Stuart Broad. It's mad. It's mad to think, but he does have the ability to do that, and we saw that pre 2014. His dad was an opener for England, and Stuart can bat. Like he can. He's got very good timing.
Yeah.
But
match referee for this game as well.
Yeah. He just since he got hit, he hasn't liked to get in the line of the ball for fear of it happening again. And understandably, he looked like a panda for 6 weeks, and I think he broke his nose. He had 2 black eyes. It was a for those who don't know, he was bounced and the ball went through the visor of his helmet, between the gap between the helmet and the visor, and struck him straight on the nose. It was a horrible, horrible blow, and I wouldn't want to play cricket ever again if that happened to me. So fair enough to him that he's carried on and can bat like this against a team which is kind of, it's the second best. Well, it was until perhaps this series, but it was ranked as the second best pace attack in the world. So
I mean, he just smacked him about, and it is. I mean, it's a very hard thing to do anyway. But for any player, but when you're 7 down at that point, and you still need to make decent runs, most other players would be tempted to, obviously just defend and set up that wall and just block. And also, compounding that, you're not just 7 down. It's the very start of the day. It's literally an hour into the day or something like that. You're a tail end batsman, and you've had the experience that Stuart Broad had 7 years ago. When you consider all those factors, it becomes even more spectacular what you did.
And it really helped England as well. We were talking yesterday. Yeah. England, it would have been nice not to bat past lunch. They pretty much definitely didn't want to bat past tea, given how the day is likely to be shortened. I think there's rain forecast for today. We don't know what's going up up in Manchester. I can look in a minute. But it was really significant in that it brought so many runs to England and gave them such a good lead, and then gave them, our innings finished and lunch was taken, and it gave them 2 whole sessions to bowl at the West Indies. And now they have 2 not quite set batsmen overnight. They're deep in the order. They're the follow-ons a real possibility. Dowrich looks like he's going to be bounced out any moment. He really doesn't like the short ball. So it's a great position for England at the moment. And
it's looking really good for England right now.
But it's not really a question now of how good either team is. It's can England. We think they're going to win this game, but can they do it in the time that the weather gives them? We were very lucky yesterday in that we were forecast to have basically a washout, and not a ball was lost.
Yeah.
But we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, there's it's like what we were saying yesterday, where the questions now and the thing that will decide this game is the tactical sort of knowledge and the tactical skill of Joe Root and the England management in how they in how they go about sort of making the most of the play that we're going to get, because that's where the game is going to be won or lost, is the decisions that they make. So I think it underlines just how important it is for them to get those decisions right now, and just what the pressure will be like on them, because we're in such a good position now.
Sorry, I'm looking at my weather forecast, and it says, this is in Manchester, so it says today there's basically no chance of rain until around 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Then there's a 43% chance at 2, a 47% chance at 3, a 51% chance at 4, but that's the only time it gets above 50% chance. But it thinks there's going to be rain at 4, and then 5, 6, and 7 is all clear. So we should get a decent bit of cricket today.
Yeah. So
and just
if everything goes well, then we should.
The forecast.
We'd only lose an hour then.
It says rain for tomorrow and Tuesday. So
they've got 2 days to win this game, basically.
Basically, we've got today hopefully a good chunk of play today, and then interrupted days.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, and Tuesday, and then the 5th day would be Wednesday, and that's pretty clear. So kind of probably 2.5, 3 days all in all.
Yeah.
Well, like 2.5 days. Yeah. Tomorrow and Wednesday is probably going to get Tuesday rather is going to get interrupted.
So the pressure is on for England to save this game, because obviously a draw works in the West Indies' favour in terms of the series, because it will still be a drawn series, but they'll take this trophy back. So the pressure is all on England here. It's England's to lose, really. That's the way to look at this game. Yeah,
and hopefully they won't get ruined by the weather, because that would be very frustrating, and kind of as soon as they get, they had the Ashes thing where they drew the series and then lost the trophy, went back to Australia, and then we won in South Africa, but now this could happen again. We get a drawn series because of the weather. Basically, in the Ashes, I'm not saying that we should have won those Ashes, because we played terribly at times, but there was that one game which was drawn, which England were all set to win, but then a day got washed out and Australia held on for the draw. So it must be getting frustrating for this England team to turn up in the English summer and have their chances of winning big series ruined by rain.
Yeah, it must get frustrating, because it's happened 2 summers in a row, as you said. And it wouldn't be a very fitting end to the Test series that we've had, because it's been thrilling so far. It's been brilliant. And I would like the 3rd Test to be in the vein of the first 2 Tests. I would like it to be really, really engaging and have a day 5 finish as well. But the rain could damage that. But let's
appropriately enough, it would be a very kind of damp end to this, very exciting series, and hopefully, as you say, that can be avoided. Anyway, moving on, as you say.
Moving on, yeah. So what happened to the West Indies openers and their top order? Because what we saw was them 2 down before 50, 5 down before 100. It was a real sort of collapse of the West Indies batting line. I think it was, they lost 6 for 107 or something like that. So it was, there was many wickets lost for not a lot of gain. And so the question has to be asked is, what actually happened there? So was it just a day off for the openers, or was it something deeper that, the struggles that we anticipated they would have, before this series, we've now seen that they're having those struggles?
I think it is actually a deeper thing for the West Indies. I'm just going to get the scorecard up to confirm my suspicions, but it seems like, other than Craig Brathwaite being lost early, which I think was a big thing for England and a big turning point, other than that, the innings was fairly typical from each of the West Indian batsmen, other than maybe Shamar Brooks. So Brathwaite uncharacteristically went early. Then Campbell has always had this problem of can get runs and can score fluently, but can't bat time. So he batted 50 balls, 82 minutes, and had a strike rate of 64, which is a very good strike rate for a Test opener. But then he gets out. And you could see he was pushing forward, and then got bounced out by Archer. Very good bowling. But he to the extent that Andrew Strauss on the commentary predicted it, he said, I think there's going to be a short one here, and then Archer bounced him. So,
with Campbell, it was really interesting because he'd come in to the ball before Archer bowled it quite full, and he played brilliant, really solid defence. It was if you wanted a video that you'd use to coach youngsters and kids on how to bat solid defence, you'd use that. You use that technique because it was brilliant. And because he was leaning forward, he was coming into the ball. They sort of realised that he's done this for a good few balls now. So it's sort of something clicked with Archer, and he said, "Well, if I pitch one up and pitch one short, he's not going to be able to do anything about it because he's too far forward." And that's what happened.
And he just gloved it to Burns at Gully. So, and then Shea Hope sort of had a Joe Denley-esque innings, 64 balls for 17 runs. And then, in fairness to him, it was a beauty from Anderson. It was the sort of delivery we associate with him, this kind of late moving outswinger, which...
It was brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, starts on the line of off stump, squares up the batsman, and just takes the edge. Brooks got quite unlucky. He usually sticks around a good bit, but he got quite unlucky. Just a good ball from Anderson, thin inside edge through to Butler.
Can we talk about Chris Woakes' wicket?
We can. Yeah, that was a beaut.
Amazing.
An absolute beaut. But that again is a kind of problem that Blackwood's been having. He's very similar to Campbell in that he's aggressive, he plays his shots, he doesn't stay in for very long, and he doesn't make big runs. He made 26 off 45 balls in 83 minutes with a strike rate of 57, and it just isn't sustainable for him. So it brought to mind for me actually the Ireland test against England last year in the first innings where England kind of got skittled by Ireland, because while it was good bowling and everything, this is a very similar situation. It's good bowling and the attack worked well and they had a plan. But you looked at it and it was just every batsman, it seemed like all their weaknesses clicked into place on the same innings, and they all got out in the way that they kind of always get out. And so, it's really that case. Like in that Ireland test, we saw, Johnny Bairstow got LBW bowled because there was a massive gap between his pads. Jason Roy can't drive the ball in Test cricket, and so he got bowled. That sort of thing. All these kind of archetypical mistakes made by the batsman. That's what happened to the West Indies yesterday.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
But it really shows why Holder wanted to bowl first and try and get England out cheaply.
It showed that, I think also that this England team were very well prepared in that, obviously there's a certain amount of preparation that goes on before Test series, and part of that preparation is you watch videos of, of your opponent's batting, and you have a look at their dismissals and what the weakness is. And it seems, it's been brilliant because the English bowlers knew exactly what to do to target those weaknesses. And so I think it's obviously the West Indies, their archetypical mistakes were exposed, for each and every batsman. But it's part of that is to do with, they had a weakness, maybe a lapse in concentration, or it was just a weakness of technique in English conditions. But I think part of it also has to be ascribed to the fact that the English management and the England coaches have drilled these players so well, and this bowling unit knows exactly where to target these batsmen and exactly what their weaknesses are. So I think it's got a lot to say about the preparation that this England team has done.
Well, I feel very bad for Shane Dowrich. I don't think he's going to last long today at all.
Yeah.
And the reason is, England have changed their tactic to him. It was kind of just put it on a length, top of the stumps, and he gets LBW a couple of times, and he got a pair in the last game getting LBW, and you saw they started with that plan, and he looked a bit more solid. He played some good shots. He didn't look uncomfortable, and then they realised, we also saw he's a bit uncomfortable against the short ball. So they basically said every ball, telegraph it. It doesn't matter. Keep the field exactly for this, and every ball get it up sort of by his shoulders, by his throat. And what we saw is, no matter how many times you do it, no matter how predictable it is, he can't play it.
Oh no,
he has a severe weakness against the short ball. He was almost caught out off Archer in a terrible position. Ball came up sort of by his head, and he had just one hand on the bat, and he was both feet in the air, split-legged and side on, and he just poked at it. And Rory Burns would have had to have been, Spider-Man to kind of flick and catch it in time, or Ben Stokes. But but
I mean, there's a lot to say there. That shows what they usually say about Test cricket, which is when you get out into the middle in a Test match, specifically in a Test match, you'd better hope that if you do have any weaknesses in your technique, they're not picked up on by the bowlers, because when you're out in the middle, there's nowhere to hide. The spotlight is on you in a more brutal way than it is in any other form of the game. And in any other sport really, because it's just you versus that bowler and that field. And I do predict that they'll get Jofra on as well, and there will be some very, very hostile to Shane Darrett, and they're just going to try and square him up, try and get him, try and get him to glove, or to sort of edge one off.
And they're being very disciplined in their attack of Darrett, in that they're not wasting bounces. He's quite a short man, and they're not just sending them over his head. They're consistently getting them about shoulder, neck height. And I think Darrett in the near future, the next time the West Indies play, if he doesn't sort this out, he's going to have a very uncomfortable time. He's already having difficulty with the gloves at the moment in England, and he's dropping a lot. But with the bat, he's going to have a significantly uncomfortable time, because he's not going to take the short ball on. He can't take it on effectively. He doesn't really get out the way effectively. So I think he's going to have a very torrid time today and against whoever the West Indies play next, because he's going to get bounced repeatedly, and just every ball is going to be at his head.
Oh yeah, this is now a weakness that's been glaringly exposed, and every other Test team in the world will have a look at this and say, "Well, this is how we target him. This is his key." And so, the only thing for him to do is, well, in this innings, there's not much you can do because you're out in the middle now. There's you can't change that technique. But over this, over the next few months, because they don't play another Test series for a while, so he's got a few months. He needs to get into the nets and sort this out. And there needs to be some serious work done against the short balls. And one other point to add is Shane Dowrich. I think his height also doesn't help him with short balls, in that it's much less taxing on a bowling side to bowl short balls at him, because he's shorter. So you don't need to pitch it as short as you would need to do for someone like Jason Holder, and so they can bowl a little bit fuller. Obviously not full, but they can bowl a little bit fuller, and it will still, reach neck or head height. And so it's much less taxing on the bowlers, which means there can be more spells of this hostile short ball.
And it's harder to pick up that length. Is it going to kind of come at my ribs? Is it going to come at my pads? Is it shaving the top of the stumps? Because it can be a bit, especially if he gets on a pitch with some uneven bounce, when some of them are going to stay low and some of them are going to rocket up by his face. Then he's going to have a real problem. We saw it with Burns in the Ashes, and he's sorted it out quite well. He got out a couple of times because he was a bit of a compulsive hook shot player.
Are you trying to be in both of them too much?
And he got caught a couple of times, and now he just quite nicely ducks out of the way of the ball. And Dowrich has to learn a way either of taking the short ball on or effectively getting out the way of it, because he's all in a muddle at the moment.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the example of Rory Burns is really interesting, because he had weaknesses that were exposed, and he went, this is one of the stories before this series, was how he went away in the gap that England had between the Ashes and their winter tours, and worked really hard in the nets to sort them out. And the next time he came out, especially in South Africa, he was able to sort it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just plugging my laptop charger in for our YouTube viewers who can see me doing it. There we go, because it's about to die. So
he's fallen off his chair. That's what's actually happened.
Yeah, I'm actually heavily drunk at 10:15 in the morning, and I've collapsed off my chair.
But on a Sunday.
I think it showed what yesterday showed really was how much this West Indies team relies on their bowling attack.
Oh yeah.
And how wrong things go for them when the bowling attack, is tired and beaten up,
Yeah.
and they don't have the depth that they need. And
West Indies
imagine
are
if
a
this,
team who are very good in low scoring contests, and they can really do well in low scoring contests where it's very gritty and attritional. But as soon as you get a team, as soon as their bowling attack doesn't work, then as you said, they're exposed, and you can't have a Test side who relies so heavily on their bowling attack, because obviously bowlers win series, yes, but you need to put runs on board. And if you come up against a team who have the quality of batsmen, obviously I'm not saying England do, but if you come up against a team who have batsmen of the quality that aren't going to get out easily, or if you come up against a team, or you have a day like they have in this series, where your bowlers are tired and they're not performing to the standard that they should be, you're going to struggle, because then you have nothing to fall back on. You need to have runs as well.
yeah, I mean, the good thing about having a great bowling attack, which the West Indies do, is that it buys you a certain amount of flexibility in your batting. But I'd still say, to win games, if you don't have that great bowling attack, you need a batting lineup which can kind of consistently score 400-ish.
Yeah.
I'd say if you've got as good a bowling attack as the West Indies do, that buys you a bit of flexibility in that you kind of need a batting lineup which will make 300-ish pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Ideally like 350.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the West Indies are in this situation where they've got this great bowling attack, but they're getting tired out. They don't have depth in it.
Yeah.
And then they have a load of batsmen who, in domestic cricket, not even in Test cricket, are averaging in the 30s, and a batting lineup which, on a good day, will make 350, but on the regular, will make about 200, 250.
Yeah.
And that's just not enough to win games. They looked really good in this first test, but they've got more and more tired. Imagine if this was a 5-test series. By the end of the series, they'd be worn out.
Oh, it would be, yeah. No, it just wouldn't work.
So they really need to step up their batting, and the domestic cricket scene in the West Indies needs to play a big part in this. It's helped their fast bowling. But if you look at, well, first of all, half their batsmen are averaging below 40 in first-class cricket, not even in Test cricket. Whereas England, most of them are averaging over 40 in domestic cricket and just under 40 in Test cricket, 35 or something. So that's a big problem. And also you get people like Shea Hope, where there's this weird inconsistency in the selection, where they've selected Shea Hope, even though he hasn't played domestic West Indian cricket since 2017 and has been playing a load of ODI cricket and I think a bit of county over here possibly.
He hasn't played much county. And talking about Shea Hope, there's actually a very good article by Mike Atherton. He was in the Times a couple of after the last test actually, and he actually said that what's happened is because Shea Hope especially hasn't had the sort of county education or the domestic sort of first class education that he needs in order to refine his technique and learn how to bat time and learn the demands of what the longest form of cricket he's going to always have those weaknesses, and he contrasted it actually with Craig Brathwaite, because Brathwaite's been quite good this series. He's been probably the one West Indies top order batsman who's consistently performed. With the exception of this test and this innings, the first 2 tests he's performed almost every innings. And what's happened is that obviously he's had a county education. He's played a lot of county cricket because he sort of prioritises his first class game over the short. But what's happened to differentiate him from Shea Hope is that because of that, because of where their priorities lie, one of them has skills that are more suited to short form and ODI cricket, and the other one has skills that are more suited to Test cricket. And it's just the natural progression of what's going to happen. Is that if you spend more of your time playing first class cricket, you're going to have more of the skills that are suited for Test cricket. And if you spend more of your time playing ODI cricket or one day cricket, you're going to have more skills that are shorter to the short form of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that Shea Hope hasn't played long form domestic cricket regularly since in 3 years and is still in the test team, but then Nicholas Pooran has not been selected because he hasn't played enough first class long form cricket is kind of ridiculous. And it's not helping Shea Hope's form. He's averaging, I think, close to 50 in one day cricket and averaging something like 20 or 30 at the moment in test. If you contrast that with, say, someone like Dom Sibley, he's averaging in first class cricket, he's averaging 41, and he's averaging currently 44 in his 8 test matches. That's early in his career, but I'll take a look at Joe Root, for example, who, even though he's not in the best of form, in first class cricket, he's averaging 48, and he's averaging 48 across his career in test matches.
Yeah.
So, you need someone who is averaging high in domestic cricket, because if you're taking someone to test level, very good players can translate their average over into the highest level, like Joe Root is doing and Dom Sibley's been doing. But it's very rare to find someone like Sibley so far with a higher average in test cricket than they have in their first class game. So if you're selecting people who are averaging 34, 35 in domestic cricket, it's unlikely they'll average more than that in test cricket, and far more likely they'll end up averaging close to 30, 28, 29.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is a big problem.
I think the other thing to say is that there's obviously there's the financial and practical reasons why Shea Hope is prioritizing his short form game. That's and we have to talk about that, and we have to recognize that at the very least. But at the same time, I think you use the example of Joe Root. Someone like Joe Root or even Ben Stokes, they show how you can be good at both forms of the game. You can if you don't have to neglect your first class game or your test game. You still put the time into that, but you can also go on and do well in the short form game in ODI and T20 cricket. But it's all about where your priorities lie, and it's all about how you prioritize. So Jacob has just fallen into a.
Sorry, carry on. I'm coughing my lungs out. I'm just going to mute myself while.
So it shows really that you can be good at both forms of the game, but it's where your priorities lie, and it's how you prioritize. You need to prioritize the first class game really, because that's what it takes most time to perfect. And then once you prioritize that, you translate those skills into your game, because really your first class skills can translate into your game, but your skills don't translate into the first class game.
Although I think that's possibly a bit of an unfair standard.
Or maybe actually, maybe that would have been true 20 years ago, and today is much less true.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an unfair standard to set, in that you talk about Joe Root and Ben Stokes. These are two, world class, top of their game batsmen. And actually, if you look at Joe Root particularly, probably the one day stuff has had a bit of a detrimental effect on him.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, England's kind of young core of significantly good batsmen, people like Pope and Sibley, don't play a lot of. I don't think Dom Sibley's ever played international short form cricket. He doesn't regularly play short form domestic cricket, and he scores a lot of runs in long form cricket, and that's kind of what they specialise in. I think there's a lot more.
I think the biggest example of that specialisation is Chichester Pujara, and how he is like one of the rocks of the current Indian batting lineup, and has been for a good few years. And he's very much in the mould of Rahul Dravid, in that he's never played short form cricket. He doesn't have any interest in playing short form cricket. His specialism and the key to his game is that he spends so long perfecting his technique in first class cricket, and he can bat for days.
Craig Brathwaite's another example of that, and I think there is a lot more specialisation going on, which leads to the debate about kind of having the separate squads, which is starting to happen now. And I think that's a good development. The Indians have been getting this right for a very long time. If you look at their T20 and Test teams, the top three are completely different, and only a kind of select few people like Kohli and Rohit Sharma, who are these world-class batsmen, they're the only ones who go across. I think it's currently Prithvi Shaw, Mayank Agarwal, and Pujara, who are the top three for the Indian Test team. That's completely different. They're not even in the ODI T20 team.
And you wouldn't want to see them in an ODI team, because it wouldn't be very nice to watch, because their technique isn't suited to that game.
Yeah, other than maybe Prithvi Shaw, he has done a bit of. He was under-19 captain, wasn't he, at the ODI World Cup? And
I think so. Yeah.
He's just an all-round great player, but he's young and he's kind of developing, and I think they're channeling him into this Test opener role, and it's good to see that separation.
I think the other thing to say is that it's not just India that are doing that now. Australia have started.
We've started.
And we've started as well, yeah. And I think we spoke about this, right at the start of one of our very first episodes, about how this crisis it's forced that development of the separation to be done quicker than otherwise it would have done. And really, that's not going to go away now. That will continue, and that's going to be one of the effects of this. That's going to be felt for a long time. But I mean, you can see that as well, that you have a totally different ODI setup for England. If we talk in England's case, you have a totally different ODI setup, and you have a select few, as you said, Archer, Mark Wood, possibly, Ben Stokes, and Joe Root. And those would be it. That
I wouldn't include Joe Root in that.
You wouldn't include Joe Root.
Just on the.
But you've got that select few, 4 players there, 3 or 4 players who can switch between both and play, in either. And they're the ones who will stay behind at the end of a Test series on tour and wait to the ODI series, and everyone else goes home, because they've done their bit in the Test matches, and that's where they've been selected, because that's where their form is. And I think that once we start doing this, and once it starts happening regularly, especially abroad, we're going to look back and think, why didn't we do this before? It's going to be one of those developments that's going to be looked at in 10 years' time, like, why did it take us so long to do this? Because it's so self-evident when you actually start doing it, and you actually appreciate how different the two forms of the game are.
Well, the big three have always kind of been the indicator of where the game is going: Australia, India, and England. And if you look at their selection, 2 of the big three, us and India, have a completely different top 3 than they do in Tests than they do in ODI T20. So their top 3 in the Test team don't really feature even in the ODI T20 team. Australia, they have 2 of their top 3 don't. No, only one of them, Marnus, is in the ODI T20 team, but they have a very different looking top 3 in the sense of the order of them. But the reason they have a more similar top 3 than the other 2 is because they have people like Warner, Smith, Marnus, who are these 3 absolutely top class, can bat in any format batsmen. They're very lucky in that. So, Warner is a fantastic T20 ODI opener and a good Test opener, and Steve Smith can play anywhere he pleases, really. He just has to ask.
Yeah.
So the Australians are kind of blessed in that, but the general direction of the game is that separation between the Test batting lineup and the short form batting lineup.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's going to be a separation.
Anyway, from talking about the evolution of the game to discussing how it's falling behind.
Yes, we need to discuss this. So, right, there's two bits to this, and I think in the interest of time that we have, it's probably worth discussing them both together. The first is no balls, and how there were many instances, not just yesterday, but throughout this series, of no balls not being called. and you know, in the replays they're shown as no balls, but for some reason they can't be called as them afterwards, even though the technology is there to do that. And the second thing is bad light, you know, and this is something that's really annoyed me. The last 2 days of this game and the Southampton test as well, and even in the last test, you know, there was some bits of this, that bad light has ended days early, or not let days start early, or, you know, not let days start on time. And it's just, why in the modern game are we still stopping for light? And, you know, there's some arguments made by people that it's part of the game, and it's, you know, and this is just how the game is done. You know, it adds that strategic element to the game. But I genuinely think that it doesn't. It takes away from the game. And I would say that actually things like rain delays, you know, they add a strategic element to the game, because they're unavoidable. You know, there's nothing you can do if it starts raining, and so, you know, they're unavoidable. But bad light shouldn't be a reason, especially with now that we're in the days of floodlights, you know, in every test ground ever. Bad light should not be a reason that play stops, especially not that play stops early.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on both these things. The no ball thing, up until yesterday, really infuriated me. I got so annoyed. Shannon Gabriel, I saw step over the line. I was like, why is this not being called every ball? First of all, it doesn't help the batsman, because it's runs that they've missed, extra runs from the no ball. And also, you know, it's only called if they get a wicket. So the bowler's getting that kind of unfair advantage, the extra yard of pace. And also, it doesn't help the bowler in that they don't know that they're doing it wrong. You can't see your foot when you're bowling. You don't know that you're stepping over the line. So they don't know that they're doing it, and then they keep the same rhythm and run up, and then they get a wicket, and oh, shock horror, he's a yard over the line because the umpire hasn't called it. That really annoyed me until yesterday, when I heard that the ICC have announced they're actually fixing it. They're actually doing it. There will be a fourth umpire at every game who watches the line with the technology they have, and will be in the standing umpire's ear, and every time there's no ball, call it.
And I mean, we do tend to criticise the ICC quite a bit, and you know, there's been a lot of criticism given over the last 10 years, especially to the ICC, and I'm sure we'll do much more of that criticism in this podcast, as you know, in the future. But on matters like that, I think they have to be commended, because that is a very quick change. And also, not just on matters like that, but the speed that the ICC has adapted to, and also in individual boards have adapted to the current situation and tried, you know, to get Test cricket on. Because in the UK, Test cricket, this Test series was the first international sporting event anywhere in the world. And what that's done is, firstly, it will help to elevate the profile of cricket, but also it showed that if the will is there, and obviously the cynic will say that the only reason it's been done very quickly this time is because of the finances and the loss that would have been made had this series not gone ahead. But it does show, you know, if you're looking optimistically at the way that the ICC can adapt very quickly, the regulations on how to shine the ball now that you can't use saliva, you know, the biosecure protocols, all of this sort of stuff really shows that if the will is there, and if they focused on everything like they do with the speed that they did this, cricket internationally as a sport would be in a much better place.
Yeah, on the no ball thing, they haven't been actually as responsive. This has been going on for years. We've had the technology to call it, and they just haven't used it. And so that's a bit slow from them. But yeah, you're right. They should be commended for how quickly they've adapted to the pandemic situation and stuff like that. But I think that goes on to the next issue of the bad light. When all this time has been spent getting cricket back on, when all the money has been spent on floodlights in every ground, and which are now deemed essential. So there's floodlights in every ground. We spent endless time and money and resources and effort getting cricket back on, Test cricket, for a consistently dwindling audience globally. Why take them off when you don't have to? Why make
exactly this
to take them off? If, first of all, I know it's a health and safety protocol, and the batsmen don't know what's good for them and all that, But first of all, you have to talk to the batsman. I think they should completely reverse the thing and the umpires just say, no, it's too bad, we've got to come off. Talk to the batsman. It's like the people who want to ban boxing because it's dangerous. Yes, they know it's dangerous. They still do it voluntarily.
Or also the parents who want to stop their kids from playing rugby at school.
It's dangerous. Yeah. They do it voluntarily. If the batsman will willingly stay on the pitch, even though they recognise the risks to themselves, they should be allowed to. Secondly, even if the light is too poor and the umpire's like, this is completely ridiculous. There's no way you can see the ball. You're just trying to hold on for to get more runs. We have to step in and protect you. They can just say to the opposition captain, the bowling captain, as they did in the Ashes, and I don't know why they're not doing it now. Both teams have 2 spinners. Yeah. Will you stick spin on from both ends? Are you willing to do that? Because the light is too poor for pace bowling at 90 miles an hour. Can you put 2 spinners on? And
or even not 2 spinners, just if you still want to play pace, you say no more bouncers. No more short balls.
That kind of, I'd say that takes away from the game a bit. But I'd just say that you ask the batsman, are you willing to stay on?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, you stay on. And if it gets ridiculously dark, so that it's realistically impossible to see the ball at pace, you talk to the opposition captain and say, well, either we can go off now, or you can put 2 spinners on, and you're happy to do that. But when there's been this much made of floodlights being in every ground, I know the ball's a bit dark, and I've not faced 90-mile-an-hour bowling. I imagine it's difficult to see at the best of times. But if you can light up the entire ground at night to a point where there is visual clarity around the ground, you can see the ball. And there's no reason they should be taken off.
This links to this other argument that, in fact, yes, you can mandate spin from both ends, and yes, you sort of speak everything. But there is another, I would say, altogether more simple solution to this, which is you use the traditional red ball, yes, but in alongside the box of rules that you have in varying states, you have pink balls in varying states as well. And with the agreement of both team captains, if the light gets deemed too dark, then you put on you let the bowlers use a pink ball for the rest of their for the rest of the time that they're on. But the light is yeah. And how it's such a simple solution. It's literally 4 more balls in that sort of that you have to supply, and there's no reason why it can't be done.
Just let even if you have to get an independent group in or something to do it, or just let the teams use them in the nets for a bit. Let them smack around these pink balls a bit. Obviously you've got to look at them, make sure they haven't been tampered with, but just give them to a team, maybe with someone supervising, to hit them around in the nets a bit until they get to a varying state of condition. Have one on for 3 or 4 overs, have one on for 20, and so on, and just keep these in the spare ball box, and bring on a pink ball and effectively play a day-night test. Also, play more day-night tests. Then you don't come off the bat because you have a pink ball, and yes, it starts later in the day, but you get prime time television coverage that ups the it increases the audience.
Not just prime time television coverage, you get more spectators in the stadium as well. Obviously,
after work and stuff.
In England, Australia, India, it doesn't really matter because stadiums are full anyway. But you imagine the effect it will have somewhere like the Caribbean or South Africa. You have a day-night test. The audiences you would get who are now don't, obviously the reasons that they would have to not go to test matches before, given that they're all in the day, are now no longer there. So they're going to go.
Yeah, if you get tickets for day one, just if you're able to, obviously not everyone can do this, but you could take a half day at work, or take 1 day of holiday, or you just get your ticket and you go for the last 3 or 4 hours after work, and it's such a good idea to do it, and it takes away this ridiculous we've got to come off because the light's too bad, and just when Test cricket is struggling more than it ever has in terms of bringing in revenue, staying relevant compared to the short forms, and bringing in an audience, there should be basically no reason other than extreme danger or the weather basically making it unplayable. Not like drizzle not included, unplayable weather. There should be no reason to take the players off.
I genuinely think my genuine belief is that day-night tests are the future of Test cricket. And
I think the Indians agree with you there. Sorry, BTC, I definitely agree with you. And we see them in Australia as well, and they're fantastic.
They're great spectacles. That pink ball is, and the way that it shines in the light, and especially the contrast of the whites to the green, and especially under lights, is amazing. Well, I think that in 10 years' time, I mean, this is my prediction. I don't know. Obviously, we're proved wrong very often, but my prediction is that I do think that in 10 years' time, we will see, if not the majority, then a very sizable percentage of Test series and Test matches that go on in the world will be predominantly day-night matches.
And I think that's true.
I do genuinely think that's a good thing.
There's been some, obviously India and Australia are the pioneers of this.
Yeah.
There was a day-night test last time we were in Australia in the Ashes, and it was excellent. And a special shout out to my biggest cricketing man crush, Mitchell Starc. It looked just great with him, big left arm pacer,
amazing, yeah.
Swinging the ball, and
what it does, it brings some of that sort of excitement of the short forms. When they're played at the light, especially T20 games when they're played at night, it brings some of that excitement to Test cricket. So you no longer see it as one of the key things it does. There are fundamental, there are big differences in the way the game's played. It's a day-night game, but one of the big things that it does, and one of the key things that it does, is it helps to change the image of Test cricket. So no longer is it a stuffy game that's played during the day. You now have this exciting game that you play under the lights. Everything is lit up. It's and you got this really bright pink ball. It just looks spectacular, and that helps draw people in.
Yeah, there's nothing better than seeing a day-night test in at the Wacker or the Gabba or something like that, or in India at one of the big stadiums there, because it's just so built for that, and it's fabulous.
It's amazing. And I mean, even in the UK, we've had one day-night test in the UK, which is the one at Edgbaston against the West Indies last time they were here. And I would like to see more, because it was quite a successful game, that one at Edgbaston. I mean, yeah, it wasn't fully dark because it's an English summer and it doesn't get dark at 8 p.m. here. But you still, even when the sky is becoming darker, when it's the evening, you have this under the lights, you still have the pink ball. It still looks pretty good, and it does draw people into the game. Yeah,
it's not the MCG, but it is good. Okay, well, play starts in 15 minutes. So,
right. One last thing that we will discuss, and then we have to get.
Then we go and watch the cricket, which is kind of our job now.
Yeah. So there has been news from a small island off the coast of Scotland called Iona that an opera about the Cricket World Cup final has been produced by I think it's two school teachers while they've been in lockdown. And I have heard, because they played it on TMS yesterday, I have heard one of the songs from that opera. And it sounds pretty good, actually. And they've got it's a one-act opera, but it's got about 10 or 12 songs, something like that. And it's the whole World Cup final. That's pretty cool. And I do think that I would like to listen to that when they release it to the general public. And also, I mean, it would be great to get the guys who wrote that. I think Alice and Jane or something like that, two school teachers who wrote that. It would be great to get them on the pod and talk about that.
Yeah, if you're listening, please come on. We'll try and find out if we can contact you or something. Yeah. We've just been talking about how to make cricket this kind of nighttime, cooler, less middle class game, and now we just said, "Oh, darling, there's an opera about it." So maybe that's not. They're
two different spectrums.
But it's the extreme end of cricket, and I think it's very funny. It's fantastic.
I do. I think it's great.
it shows how impactful that World Cup final was on,
Oh yeah,
even
definitely.
up in Scotland, which it's hardly kind of rooted into English culture,
Yeah, yeah.
being up in Scotland. So yeah, I think that's fantastic.
I
And
think it's brilliant. But the question I wanted to ask you is obviously there's this opera that's been produced. So thinking about cricket in wider media, so I'm talking films, songs, etc. What's your favourite example of a cricket themed or cricket being featured in wider media?
I think in terms of cricketing songs, you can't get much better than he bowls to the left, he bowls to the right, Mitchell Johnson, his bowling is we won't say it. And then, yeah, that's a good one. And then he destroys you in the 2013 Ashes, and
Yeah.
you get very, very quiet. But
Well, he literally went like that
yeah,
when he
he
put them,
didn't bowl to the left, he didn't bowl to the right, he bowled straight at the middle stump and smashed it out the ground.
and then
Anyway,
told you to shush. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so I'm not sure there are that many kind of great cricketing songs
Yeah.
outside of band chants and so on. There are some
What
really
about
good
films?
chants. In terms of films, I'm going to go with actually not a film but a TV series.
Oh, yeah.
Amazon Prime's The Test,
Yeah.
about the Australian cricket team and their kind of road from the ball tampering scandal up to last year's Ashes, is
Yeah.
a fantastic
Oh, it's
documentary.
amazing.
Great
Even
insight
if
into the
even if you don't know much about cricket,
oh
it's
yeah.
one of those series that it's like it does what any good sports documentary or any documentary really does, is that it caters to beginners as well. So it doesn't assume that you know about cricket. It will introduce you to what happened. It will introduce you to what happened in 2018 with the ball tampering. It'll introduce you to key players, and the key figures in that. And it will introduce you to some of the theories behind cricket. So there's an episode where it focuses on when Steve Smith got concussed by Jofra Archer in the Ashes last year, and they explain this theory of short pitch bowling and what happened, and bring it to views and what happened there. Very tragic. And they do all that before you actually get into the episode as a whole, so that you know what's actually happened.
Yeah, it's a fantastic series, and I think it's definitely one to watch for anyone kind of vaguely interested. I really hope that's not a one-off. I hope they start doing it.
Yeah,
It would be great to
definitely.
see it done with England.
Well, there
Kind of,
was so
or
the
if they
rumors
just
are.
sorry, carry on.
The rumors are that there was actually the England team were actually approached both before the World Cup by Amazon saying, "Can we follow your ODI team?" And they said no. And then they were approached by Amazon again before the Ashes series to say, "Can we follow your test team?" And the ECB said no again.
Oh.
So had they said yes, it would have been at the English teams and not the Australian.
I think it would be in terms of just general fanboying. It would be really interesting to see that kind of as an alternate series between Ashes series. So follow England over 2 years, Australia, and just kind of
That would be amazing, yeah. And it
or
culminates in this sort of in the
yeah,
Ashes. Oh.
or if we want to extend it, if we want to be good for the game and extend it beyond the big three,
Yeah.
I think it'd be really nice to see stuff about pretty much every test playing nation, a series
Yeah, definitely.
on.
Yeah.
England going into the next Ashes, India going into maybe their famous kind of Christmas test series against Australia every other year, and the West Indies going into various places. Cricket returning to Pakistan, that would be a fantastic one. If we ever get there, fingers crossed. The first for I can't think how many years.
13 years or something now?
Well, the first India-Pakistan Test
Oh
series
yeah,
in
yeah.
Pakistan.
That'd be spectacular.
That would be unbelievable. But all this stuff. There's great documentaries to be made in that vein, and they got it so right with the Australian one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
South Africa as well. They got it so right with all this stuff that I think it would be really interesting to see as many teams as possible kind of mapped along a couple of years by Amazon, and I think it would get the test got millions of views, and
it was such a hit, and
I think
especially in Australia. Yeah,
would be success from success from success. So that would be really lovely to see.
Right. So the test day 3 starts in 10 minutes. So let's finish with our player of the day, and we'll describe the day.
Okay, so star player for the West Indies, Kemar Roach taking 4. I think he's bowled better and better throughout the series. We didn't mention it actually. He became in the last innings the first West Indian bowler to reach 200 Test wickets since Curtly Ambrose in 1994.
Yeah,
and he's done it at a fair lick as well. He's not played that many Test matches. Obviously, he's a bit older now, but he could well carry on. And if he manages to play 50 more matches or so on, he could end up well up that list of West Indian greats. He's a very good bowler,
definitely.
and he's my man of the match, man of the day for the West Indies. Stuart Broad's got to be my man of the.
Oh, it was a Stuart Broad day. Yeah.
Becoming up there with Botham and Flintoff in the world of Test all-rounders is one thing, and then getting rid of Craig Brathwaite, which I think was possibly the most significant wicket of the day in terms of England's bowling.
Yeah, because he was the biggest threat. Yeah.
Moment of the day: Chris Wokes knocking Blackwood's middle pole out of the ground.
So amazing.
Such a beauty. Such a beauty.
I have to admit, I did watch that on repeat a good few times. So nice.
It was a fantastic ball, and what made it even better was that the commentators on the TV just weren't paying attention. They were kind of chatting as it happened, and then
it just happened out of nowhere. It wasn't looking like that dangerous of a spell, and then suddenly he just kept one straight.
And then they kind of turned around and went, "Oh, he's bowled it." And I just, you could, if you live anywhere near me, you can hear me in the sitting room saying, "Bowled it, yeah!" So. It was a fantastic moment. And word to describe the day: rampant. The rampant lions that are England, to use a cliche. England's day, absolutely, and they played fantastically. And let's see if they can go on, crack on, win the Test, win the series, and win the trophy. Come on, boys!
Definitely. My star player, I agree with you. The West Indies, I would say Kemar Roach, because he bowled brilliantly. And he's been a real bright spark in what was otherwise quite not a very good day for the West Indies. I would say though, Stuart Broad, yes, it was amazing yesterday. It was Stuart Broad's day, so I do want to say that he was my star player. However, since you've already mentioned him, and I agree there, I thought actually I'd use my star player to mention someone else, which is Jofra. In that, obviously Jofra came back, took a wicket. With everything that's happened, to come back like that, and it almost looked like it didn't affect him. He didn't change anything. Because he did what's success before, and it shows that. Obviously, we don't know what it's like inside that training camp. Inside that camp, we don't know what he's like personally. What effects it's had on him. But it seems on the pitch at least like he's not going to let it affect him. So Jofra, just for sheer resilience. Over the course of the day, really. I'd say he's my star player for England. And then my moment of the day, I would say when he hit that 6 over Jason Holder's head. Oh, it was amazing, absolutely amazing. Just took him back over mid wicket. Stuart Broad 6 was my moment of the day, and then work to describe the day. Exciting to see. England doing so well, but also this game is brilliantly poised.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that concludes this episode. And with 6 minutes to go until the start of play on day 3, we will sign off here and join you once day 3 is over to discuss day 3. But yes, thank you for listening and goodbye.